Last year, I decided I needed to change the way I live and spend my time. I needed something to test my commitment, no matter how much I wanted to give up or backstab my own pursuit of a challenge. I spent the first half of 2023 overthinking and researching and endlessly deliberating, and then the second half doing paperwork, getting dopamine hits from email notifications, and stalking house share groups on Facebook. This year, I'm headed for an exchange semester at the University of Sydney in Australia. And I'll be back in this room in June. This is a Homebody's travelogue. I landed on a Monday afternoon and everything was so bright. Even the concrete and moving, every leaf on the plane trees shimmering, trams and pedestrians and the quick edges of the skyline. Just so big and exciting. I couldn't believe I actually made it here. And though upon arrival it seemed like I got scammed by my Airbnb, long story short, I wasn't scammed. But I'd navigated my way out of what could have been a crisis, and I was constantly internally celebrating. When I first told the friends and lecturers and people around me that I was going abroad, I would quickly add that it's just to Australia though, and joke that I'm only heading over to our neighbours. Indeed, the rest of the exchange student cohort are shooting for Asia and Europe and the Americas, and I'm crossing the Tasman. But the more I repeated that guilty explanation, the staler it felt in my mouth. At one point, I realized I was sick of putting myself down. And the sheer joy I felt every day just for feeling the tempo of a brand new environment was more than enough proof that I'm trying my best to live, and I'm living, and I'm living. And I won't discount my experience in the face of comparison anymore.
So many parks here. I'm really happy.
It had been too long since I was in a city that felt truly alive. When you're taking on the world alone for the first time, even grocery shopping feels entertaining, especially if you're only heading in for a few select items and not trying to feed yourself for the week. That's when it feels the most like a side quest. My very first Aldi haul, consisted of a mango, a single banana, and a SIM card. There are curiosities big and small tucked away everywhere, and often very unassuming on the outside. One such example was a building I got lured into initially by the vintage clothing shop located on the first floor sign, then a sign for the second-hand bookshop on the fourth. So I kept going up the stairs, and let me tell you, this was the sketchiest building I've ever been in, complete with a dingy, tagged-up elevator. But for some reason my gut instinct didn't make me U-turn and get out of there. And I'm glad I didn't, because while this place was a labyrinth of identical, shabby-looking hallways on all 10 floors, it was like a real-life Christmas advent calendar, with art studios, jewelry makers, a hub for zines, tattoo studios, yoga classes, milliners, vintage shops, and independent brand designers behind every door. You just had to be curious enough about the cryptically minimal advertising and be brave enough to knock. My personal favourite was Tree Paper Gallery, a Riso printing studio, where dreams are born. I fell in love every day with the late afternoons in Melbourne. It's when people suddenly start living slower and they just chill in the square, on the grass, the cathedral steps. They talk quietly amongst themselves, or not at all. So many people contemplating silently, or just being there and letting their minds be an empty vessel. I can't really tell which. It's a time of small joys, like looking out over the Yarra River while leaning on this brick wall that's warm from being in the sun all day. Perhaps because my appetite had gotten messed up after a day of hitting the ground running, or perhaps because I forgot that overcast weather also exists in Melbourne. On the second day, I remembered that a city is where the everyday happens, not just a novel international destination. The tourists were always easy to pick out from the crowd, but I was also starting to notice the dog walkers, the high schoolers making the most out of their final week of summer break, the rowers who aren't doing their thing for my entertainment but for their own personal goals and aspirations. As much as everything looked to me like a film set, a forever postcard, I realized that the city was still growing and renewing and reinventing itself alongside me. I saw myself in the commuters walking at top speed at 8 a.m. and in the mother-daughter pair heading to school. I saw them twice at the same crossing on different days. I used to have her exact same uniform blazer with the bulk of the shoulder pads visible under backpack straps and the sleeves coming down past the fingertips for sake of growing room. All fresh without creases, a telltale sign that it was the first week ever of secondary school. Except mine wasn't in that shade of pastel blue, it was red. Just in case you were curious. People are always coming and going. Where are they going? To check out the new cafe? To meet a friend in front of the station? Most of all to work, probably. A city is just a container full of people doing all sorts of ordinary and not so ordinary things that I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. There is just so much to see and learn. Before I left New Zealand, my biggest worry was not that I would miss home, but that I would not be able to create one to anchor myself, that I'd be scattered everywhere like windows. I've only ever felt like I can replenish my energy at home. If I'm out of the house, and especially if I'm in overstimulating places like the CBD, then my battery is going to drain. Sometimes I feel a bit like those Dyson stick vacuum cleaners. Like, as long as I'm secured at home base, I'm charging, I'm good. Interestingly, there's been no homesickness to date, but midway through my week in Melbourne, the consequences of oversaturating my senses all day every day meant I was running out of energy and grounding fast. Sometimes I would be checking off up to 3 art galleries and museums a day. When I did lie down to unwind at a park, a small voice urged like a pulse that I shouldn't idle for too long, because it would leave me no time to see the rest. Everything beckoned me to explore it, but I didn't have enough attention to spare. How different is being a tourist from binging short-form content online? On Wednesday afternoon, I picked one of the deck chairs in Fed Square and video called my family for an hour. You don't need to put yourself under so much pressure to see everything now, my mum said when I told her about the blisters I got on my toes from walking. You'll be back there for work or to see friends. You have time. Just enjoy and look after yourself. And suddenly there was my closure. I'm going to allow myself the luxury of traveling slowly from now. So I experimented. I let myself shut my eyes on the tram for a short while instead of spying on every leaf, tile, and pedestrian. I picked up my longtime favourite activity of cloud watching again. And I still got to see everything I wanted to. I became a witness of so many kinds of lives. I thought of it as collecting a palette of what living can look like. Now, I don't know if I'd ever end up boating down the river with old friends, wine and a charcuterie board, or be yelling to the person sitting across from me to be heard over the other tables and the music at the waterfront bars on a Friday night, or taking a train at rush hour again. But I'm glad I got to be part of the story somehow. This story, this whole ongoing story of the city and the whole constellation of people and places. My last morning in Melbourne started with what I'll interpret as a lucky charm. And with a feeling of lightness and immense hope, I was moving off again.